If you're looking for a new way to support the podcast, check out Dubby.gg, an energy supplement company trying to make a difference. There you can use code SIDEMISSION for 10% off your order. Thank you to Dubby for sponsoring this episode, and we hope you enjoy.
Welcome into the newest episode of Side Mission. I, like always, am your host, Rusty Ellis, joined by just one of the boys, Matt Beck. And today, Matt, we are finally talking about Life is Strange Double Exposure, a game that at this point came out well over a month ago. So if you've been waiting for this episode, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Because for some reason, we just kept putting this one off and off and off. But finally, we are here and we're good to talk about it. We've been good to talk about it. I think, Matt, for a couple weeks, me and you have been good to talk about it. Because I think I beat it shortly after release. You finished it, probably 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, something like that?
Roughly about 3 weeks ago, yeah.
Yeah, you finished it. You finished it a good bit ago, and the fact that we still hadn't recorded, again, sorry, that's on us. But the good news is this is going to be a very, very positive episode because there is, I think we both agree, Matt, a lot of good things to say about Life is Strange Double Exposure. Me personally, I think this might be the best Life is Strange they've done yet, and that comes from somebody that I was a massive fan of True Colors. I think that True Colors is one of the best point-and-click games of all time. And this game, I think, might have even surpassed that. So we'll go ahead and jump right in, Matt. The first thing for me that I loved about this game, I thought that Alex in True Colors was a great protagonist. I loved this version of Max Caulfield a lot more than the original. I liked Max in the first game. I thought that she was well-written, well-voiced, considering she was a high schooler, and that was more or less what the dialogue and the writing and the voice acting reflected. I feel like this is very much an older Max Caulfield that it's revealed that she hasn't used her ability to rewind time in years, so she doesn't really have that ability anymore. It's an older Max Caulfield, and I feel like the writing and the voice acting do a good job of reflecting that, and I think that she very much gives us one of the best performances this year.
Yeah, we got to consider the fact that this game does take place in 2023, I believe. So obviously Max is much older now. She's I want to say she's a college professor.
Yes.
In the arts, and her personality here is just so much more realized than what we got in the first game. Obviously, they were much younger. She was just experiencing having the powers to rewind time. She used much younger teen slang. And here, though, she still has a little bit of her old personality left in some ways, but also at the same time, she's a much more matured and more developed here. And obviously, she's going to need to be, because what she goes through in this game is just insane.
Yeah, I think that for me, what wore on me from the first game, and ultimately why I didn't love that performance as much, is that the naivety, I think that's how that word's pronounced, I could be wrong, and I'm sure everybody will let me know when they listen. The naive nature of her character, at some point, it kind of goes on a little bit too long in the first game, and it loses a little bit of its luster, a little bit of its charm after the first couple of episodes. And because of that, it didn't work for me as much as I would have liked. This time around, however, again, she's older, she's had a little life experience. She's got what I think stuck out to me, really, in the best way I can say it is, she's got a much more well-rounded personality in this game. She's got a good sense of humor. She's charming. She's funny. She's got her serious moments as well. Obviously, there's a lot of dark undertones in this game, as is the case with all Life is Strange games. But it's a good balance of the dark moments, the serious moments that mix really well with the more lighthearted, that mix well with the humor. And it feels very right for how old her character is now. The very first chapter of the game, when you go with Safi into the abandoned bowling alley, she's got kind of this curious nature, this nature of, I want to know the story of this place. I want to learn about this place. Like, there's this joke that it's haunted, and she almost embraces it, where I feel like the younger Max Caulfield may have been a little bit more hesitant to just go headlong into places like this. And I like, again, that's character growth. It's growth from the first game to now. And I think that her performance, I can't think of the voice actress's name, unfortunately, but it reflects really well in the performance, and it was a performance that I was very happy with, and I'm increasingly happy with it knowing that she's going to be back in the next game as well, because the game does build and gives us kind of a Marvel Cinematic Universe thing where it says Max Caulfield will return. That made me happy because I think that there's a lot to build on from this game. The story of this game also, it shines, and it's a story-based game, obviously. It's a point-and-click. It's walking around different environments, interacting with objects, taking parts in little individual side quests, sometimes doing things that with your powers that, maybe don't impact the broader scale of the story, but more or less impact the immediate environment around Max. And I like that. I thought the other real star of this game, and I think all the performances are great. We'll get into those obviously in this episode. The setting of this game, the environment of this game, it being kind of at this liberal arts college, it felt very real to real life. I've been on the campus of it, I think in Memphis, I think about like Christian Brothers or Rhodes. I think about colleges like that, campuses like that. It very much had the same vibe as a lot of those campuses do. It had the vibe of other liberal arts colleges. Like you could almost picture this place being real. And I loved that. And that to me, that's an example of the setting and the environment being as big a part of a story, just like the characters are.
Yeah, can I just also, as far as the environment goes, that I'm really jealous of Max's living quarters, because that's one of the coziest looking cabins I have ever seen, and just being in there while playing the game. Sometimes I would just chill around, look around, just be like, yeah, this is exactly what I would live in this. Like
imagine living here. That's what I said. Like imagine if you lived here.
Up in the mountains, like just that big window that she has with that view, it was gorgeous.
Yeah, I mean, that to me, I very much thought of it as like, man, what would it be like to live here? And the other thing it made me think of is, man, how much money is she making as a professor at this college? Man, good Lord, she is making good money if she's able to afford. And I'm sure, obviously, knowing how colleges work, this is not the conversation I'm sure anybody tuned into this episode for. I'm sure that the university probably pays for a good amount of it, but I was like, man, she must be raking it in as a professor. Good for her. But Matt, back to the story, it's a really, really good one. A really good one. Like, True Colors' story was top-notch. Love that story. I've played through it multiple times. I will play through this multiple times because it's one of those that it does kind of early on follow the typical Life is Strange formula. Everything seems perfect, and then tragedy strikes, and then all of a sudden you've got a little bit of a mystery to solve. In this one, your best friend, Safi, at least best friend based on what we know, you're up on the rooftop with her and Moses, another professor, and Moses is another fantastic character in this game. Loved his performance. Loved Safi's performance as well, and we're going to talk about her when we get into spoilers, because obviously her role in this story is very spoiler-heavy. Safi is shot and killed very early in this game, and I want to say within like the first 20 minutes of the game, she's shot and killed. Very reminiscent of early on in Life is Strange 1 when Chloe is shot. Now, obviously, you rewind time, and that's what jumpstarts the whole storm to Arcadia Bay. It jumpstarts all of that. Safi's murder, though, is really the big overarching story of, okay, what happened? Everything seemed fine. She had just gotten word that, she was going to have a book that was going to be published with her poems. And then all of a sudden you hear her on the phone as you're getting ready to go home, and you hear a gunshot. You see her sitting on a bench. She falls over. She's dead. And it's one of those like, okay, there's no real evidence here. What in the world happened? And it leads into possibly my favorite part of the game, because rewinding time was a really cool power. Yeah. But Matt's ability in this game to walk from different realities is such a cool power that is so well done here. I loved it. Going from the light world to the dark world, the world where Safi is alive still, and the world where she is dead, and seeing characters that are in different places, it's so well done that I just couldn't help. Every time I got to do one of these parts of the game where, like, okay, to solve this next puzzle or to solve this next part, you've got to go back and forth between the two worlds, and you've got to essentially get evidence from both and figure it out from there to progress the story. I just loved that. I thought that, again, we don't see this a lot in, I don't think we've ever seen this kind of power done in a point and click. Maybe we have and I'm just not remembering properly, but it's so well done, and it would be so easy for it to be convoluted, and yet they found a way to make it make sense and explain it in a way that you don't feel confused by everything. At first, you might be a little jarred when it first happens, and you're like, okay, this might be confusing. And it really isn't from that point on. So, Matt, I feel like her powers in this game, another thing that really put this one over the top for me.
Yeah, on top of that, with the powers that she has, it really fits the title of the game being double exposure.
Yes.
Because not only when you use the camera to take a picture, you have the option to use double exposure as a filter, but also double exposure is the fact that there are these two alternate, universes that are coexisting, where you progress throughout the game. And I think it's just really cool how, something's going on in the reality that you start off with, and then, to get answers or to find out some secrets that somebody's hiding, you just go off into the next world, into the alive world where Sophie is still alive. And, it was such a creative use of, going back from Max's rewind powers, or where Max just could look at a photo and rewind time through that way. But then now that Max is able to transcend from different realities and solve, the case of Sophie's murder, and just the way that they use it was absolutely brilliant to progress the story, especially as you're encountering other alternate reality versions of the people such as Moses, Amanda, Reggie, Diamond, and Vin, and being able to. So a perfect example is, Max is trying to find out something, and she needs to get Vin to tell her what it is, but she can't get it out of the one reality Vin, so she goes back to the next one, and she ends up making it possible to find out the solution she's trying to find. And I think that was just a great use of this power. I don't think it was some people would say that in the first game that Max, definitely abused the power to rewind time, even just to, show off to Chloe. But here, I mean, it's all for the sake of finding out who killed Sophie. And, on top of that, just everything that they fit into this game, there's just so many different mysteries, especially when it comes to Sophie, because one of the moments that we have with her before she dies, we find out that she has a book she's waiting to get published. And unfortunately, later on in the game that we found out that, people in Sophie's life prevented that from happening, which was, this big opportunity for her. And we end up finding out later on exactly what happened there too. And they just did so well with the storytelling here. I didn't feel like that they tried to shove too much into it. It felt like a real life scenario, things that could actually happen. Obviously, on top of the more supernatural, paranormal type of stuff that that exists in the world of Life is Strange. But I even had a favorite moment that with Max's powers, she could take objects from one side of that universe and bring it over into the other one.
Yes.
There's a moment in that game, without spoilers, where she does that while she's trying to hide from somebody, and I just thought that was just absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, I loved that use of it as well, and we'll get into spoilers here in a second, but I feel like a great example of, again, comparing it to True Colors, if you remember back, Alex's ability to read kind of emotions and to read how people are feeling, essentially as an empath. There's a very small moment in that game where there's a girl sitting at the bar, and she's trying to figure out what this song is that's stuck in her head, and she only knows that she's heard it at the bar. And you use the clues that you get from her and what she's feeling to go around to other characters and kind of figure out, okay, what song is she talking about? And you end up figuring it out, and you can play the song on the jukebox, and then she'll have a reaction to it. Very similarly into this game, there's a moment late where Moses is making a gingerbread house, but the piece that he's got is messed up. So you can then go to the other reality. You can get the chimney from a gingerbread house that's been finished there, and you can basically help him finish it. It's the little stuff like that I love, and I think that this game again did really well to add on to the meat of the main story, a main story that I feel like we have only just begun to uncover, and I feel like there's going to be a lot more in the next game as well. Before we get into spoilers, Matt, was there any one character performance that stuck out to you? I felt like outside of Max, and that's obviously the main thing is, not counting Max in this game, what character do you feel really kind of stole the show here? I think the easy answer is Safi. I think that she was fantastic in this game, especially, and we'll avoid the spoilers for now. We'll get into those in a second. But I feel like what her character did and what the context of what her story is, there's so much depth, and she does such a good job of conveying that while it is complicated, her motives are very, very simple in what she wants to accomplish, and a lot of that is taken from her right before she is killed. What character performance stuck out to you?
Honestly, looking back at it, I think one of the characters who stuck out to me was Amanda. And Amanda is this is Max's new crush character. She works at the Turtle, which is like this little get together hangout bar for the locals, students of Caledon. And I thought that she was a really good character. She's completely different from Chloe, but still has a little bit of kind of Chloe's mannerisms with the whole sarcastic humor thing. I think her and Max had some really good chemistry, because you also have the option to, when you first are talking to her in a conversation, it comes down to like, so is this a date that we're going to be doing? And you have the option to, go with the more romantic side of Amanda or just stay friends. And I really thought that was cool, because they also did it with another character. So they kind of give you, that choice of, is my version of Max going to be more into this guy, or is it going to be into this girl? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I ended up going along with, romancing Amanda. I did like her. I thought she was a good character, especially after Safi's death. She shows up to Max's home. She had baked her something. I think that the relationship over the course of the game is really well built. It's definitely interesting when you go from one universe to the other one, and one where basically where Max just completely ignored Amanda, and she didn't take it too harshly, because she understood what Max was going through. I mean, she was grieving for a while there, but in another different type of universe, there's no relationship there. So that was really cool that in one universe, the relationship is working, but in another one it's just almost completely non-existent. I like the voice actress for her. I thought that she definitely pulled off that more melancholy, sarcastic type of character who had her moments. I also like the little go back and forth, like on that on Life is Strange version of Facebook with her and her sister and her family. I thought that was really cool. Yes. I don't know if you spent a lot of time reading the messages, like the text messages, or going on to that little social media website, but I thought there was some really cool like banter between characters. It definitely built up more relationships, more things started to like make a little bit more sense of like who's really close, who's good friends. I mean, shoot, even Chloe is on there from time to time, just giving us an update on what she's been up to. And this is if you decide to go with the Bay version and not the Arcadia Bay version of the ending, because they do give you the option to pick between, because obviously Max and Chloe are no longer together. They kind of go through the whole thing, Chloe is blaming Max for everything that has happened and abusing, she's like, so anytime that I disagree with you or we get an argument, are you just going to use your rewind powers? And they just, their relationship and how close they were just kind of fell apart. And that happens. They were high school lovers, that's just the reality of things. I know a lot of people are very not happy about Chloe not, being in this game, or Chloe not, being what they expected her to be. But it is more realistic that way. And,
I agree.
They're still friends, obviously. But, Max is at the same time, she has that crush on Amanda. She still does have feelings on the side for Chloe. Like, obviously everything that they've been through, you're not just going to forget about her. I don't know I don't know how it transpires if you decide to go with the Arcadia Bay version where Chloe does die.
I can tell you because that's the one I went with.
That's going to be probably one of my next playthroughs. So, because I want to see that. Also, there is a achievement behind that as well. But yeah, I went on this like long tangent about this, even though it's just talking about Amanda.
Well, I can go ahead and tell you, I went with she died in and the real difference is that Chloe obviously doesn't have much of a presence. It doesn't have any presence, obviously. Yeah, she has a little bit of a presence in the story in the sense of like she is brought up, and the one thing that I think they do to balance it I didn't know that Chloe, if you just said we broke up, I didn't know that Chloe would be on the social media. So I think that's really cool. For me, it was more her mom would text Max and would be like, hey, hope everything is well. Like they would stay in constant contact. They would talk. Like Max would check in on her, stuff like that. And again, it's a really good balancing act of, dealing with the grief of a breakup versus dealing with the grief of losing a loved one. And it's a really, really good balance because it is two different forms of grief that for a lot of people could hurt just as much depending on obviously the context of it all. So I think that the game does a good job of balancing that as well. I think another character we haven't mentioned her name yet, and it's a character that, again, every time she was on screen, I was like, give me more of her. That was Gwen for me. I thought Gwen was fantastic. Yeah. She's a professor at the university. They make it pretty obvious from the jump that she is trans. Used to be a man, and now she is a female. But I feel like her character is just so compelling. A lot of the things that she deals with, whether it's stuff that the other staff says about her, stuff that she's dealt with from students, stuff that she's dealt with in her past, I feel like the game handles it very, very well, and I love that. I love that it's very much a part of who she is, and the game doesn't let you forget that because it is an important part of her story. It's a very important part of it. So I was a big fan of her character as well. There wasn't really a character that I thought gave a weak performance. Like even the characters that you're not supposed to like Lucas. He is a scumbag piece of shit, but the performance is so good. It's such a good performance because it's so believable. It's so true to life that there are people out there that while something bad happens, they see an opportunity to capitalize, and that's very much his character. He saw an opportunity to capitalize on a tragedy that we'll get into, and because of that, wrote a book that ended up becoming a bestseller, and at one point gets told by his agent that book is going to be turned into a movie. It's going to be adapted into a film. So but his performance, again, it was so good because I didn't like him. The game made it clear I wasn't supposed to like him, but he delivered on that so well that there are points where you almost feel for him because of what he's dealing with in his personal life. He's dealing with his ex-wife, with his son. You almost feel bad for him. So the game does a good job, again, of balancing that. That's the thing this game is. It's balanced. It's very balanced. The dark is balanced with the light. The evil is balanced with the good. And it does such a good job of that. Again, I love this game. I think that's very clear from what we've talked about so far. I love this game quite a bit. And I think that a lot of it has to do with how they balance everything. Because it's really difficult to do that, but yet they do it to a near flawless extent. Now, getting into spoilers. So if you've not played the game and you don't want it spoiled for you, go ahead and click away. This episode will be here after you play the game. Or if you don't care about spoilers, welcome. Matt, obviously the big reveal that happens at the end of episode 3 is that Safi is a shapeshifter.
Yeah.
Because, as we have seen in the first couple of episodes, people are seeing doppelgangers of themselves. Gwen is caught on camera selling drugs to students. The detective sees a vision of himself, and we don't get a lot of payoff with that yet. I think that there's going to be a lot of payoff on that in the next game. But that happens. The biggest one is obviously when Max and Moses are going over the photos that are on the SD card. The last thing they see, because they see an extra photo was taken by Safi the night she was killed. The photo is of Max holding a gun pointed at the camera that Safi was presumably holding. So that's the big reveal, is that Safi also has powers in addition to Max. So now there's this overarching storyline of there's other people out there that have powers. And what I loved about this, Matt, and this story, and Max does such a good job of vocalizing this, I feel like, this idea that just because you have powers does not mean that it's always a good idea to use them. She makes that very clear when it came to the rewind power. The rewind power is ultimately why she had to choose between Arcadia Bay and Chloe. It's ultimately why, because she rewound time when Chloe was shot, And that is ultimately what set everything in motion to send the storm towards Arcadia Bay. Therefore, she either had to sacrifice Arcadia or she had to sacrifice Chloe because of her power. She had to learn that, hey, I've got this power, but I probably shouldn't abuse it. I probably shouldn't overuse it. The first game, she does abuse it, and she pays very dearly for it. That's why in this one, with this storyline, Matt, I liked that continuity of, hey, I get it. This power is a great thing. You can do a lot of good with it. You can also do a lot of bad with it at the same time.
Yeah, I'll say when Max had that experience, that vision of the future, and she saw the exact same storm heading for Caledon. That was that one that hit Arcadia Bay. I was starting to feel like it's almost like the storm is magnetized to, the usage of these powers that not just only Max has, but anyone else who has powers. And it just seems like all that's, destined to happen if you have powers and you use them is that your whole world, everything will be destroyed. And I just like the parallels between the first game and this one when it comes to that. Because absolutely, Max is once again abusing her powers, and once again is causing that domino effect of the storm coming to Caledon. And I think that just leads off to, this is what Life is Strange is. When I look back at the second game and in True Colors, I'm like, I wonder if at some point, if these characters themselves, like Daniel with his telekinesis or Alex with her her powers to feel emotions and all of that, is also triggering these types of storms. And that's just crazy to me that, they brought that back. But as far as like Sophie goes, yeah, and like my jaw dropped when I saw the picture of Max holding the gun, and then like the whole moment when you're up in Max's cabin and the detective shows up, I'm like, oh shit, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I just like the way that the moment of all this happens, I'm gonna, since we're going and talking about spoilers, I'm gonna go ahead and get to it. When you find out that the shapeshifter, the Max that you see in the photo, is actually Sophie, who shapeshifted into Max, this Sophie is from the Alive universe. She ended up coming to the universe where we started off at and basically killed herself and to start off these events. That is just crazy.
Yeah.
Like, they really set this up really well, and the way it just transpires throughout the game is really well done. Just getting to that moment where we finally confront Sophie, and Sophie has made up her mind, that she's basically like, I'm going to take these powers, I'm going to find other people with these powers, and basically it's like I believe it's like she ended up getting a god complex, and when that happens, you completely forget about anyone that you love and that you care for. All you care about is being at the top, is having people underneath you who do your bidding, and that's exactly what happened with Sophie.
Yeah, I think that obviously the story really kicks into gear more so than it already had at that point, because obviously what we're led to believe is that the Sophie in the Alive world figured out what happened with her book. She figured out why it was killed, and obviously a friend of hers that committed suicide was a big jumping off point for that, because that's what she wrote a lot of her poetry about. She wrote her poems about, what happens when you forget about the people that you didn't take care of and that you weren't there for. And it was very damning towards Lucas, towards Yasmin, her mother, the president, or the chairwoman of the university. Like, it's very, very damning for Caledon, and it ends up getting canceled. Her book does, because Gwen, she knows the publisher, and she's the one that worked to get the book published to begin with. The publisher sends back, this is very incendiary, this could be very, very controversial, and it could do a lot of damage to a lot of people. We don't know if this is the best thing to proceed with. So now Sophie is kicking off all of these events, essentially as her way to somewhat take revenge. Because the first thing she does, or one of the first things, is she shapeshifts as Gwen and destroys her reputation. And makes it look like she is selling drugs to students, and ultimately it gets her fired. And it's this warpath that she goes on, and she goes after Lucas as well, because Lucas took her friend's work, turned it into his own book, pretty much plagiarized it word for word, And he benefited from it. He benefited from it and essentially made a name for himself. He was a struggling author, and he ended up becoming a best-selling author because of her friend's work. And so she, again, goes on this warpath of revenge that, like you said, this God complex is developed, but how it's handled, again, you almost kind of understand why she's doing it. You kind of feel for Safi, and you feel for the fact that this university and the people in charge and the people that work at it, they knew what happened with her friend, and they more or less covered it up. They knew that it would do a lot of damage to the reputation of the university if the real details got out, and they kind of just slander her friend and say, well, she was very troubled, had a lot going on, and just mentally she wasn't able to handle it. And again, you heard me say this a couple times, it's so true to real life. It sounds like something that could be happening right now at a university, that there is a student that is very gifted, that could be one of the best graduates the college could ever have, but because they didn't have the help they needed to have, they ended up not making it, and in worse circumstances took their own life because of it. So Safi, what she's doing is not right. But I think the best part of it, Matt, is at some point you completely understand why she's doing it. It makes perfect sense why she's doing it. It doesn't justify the actions, but you understand how she feels, and that's the main reason why Safi in this role, it's the main reason why it works.
Yeah, as much as Max is the main character, Safi definitely steals the show for me in this game, because the people in her life that she is closest to just completely betrayed her and took away, something that she was super passionate about. I mean, when your own mother, because she's afraid of the school being exposed for what happened to, for Maya, she takes away something from Safi that she knows Safi wants more than anything in the world. And she manipulates and has two people who are very super close to Safi, which was Vin, who is also close to Maya as well, and,
and Gwen,
and Gwen, to do those things to her. So yeah, Safi has these powers. So of course she's gonna do whatever she can do to get revenge. And this is what, and it does turn this game into a revenge story. But the thing is, Max is there to balance it out, and I'm really glad that Max did take center stage here, because she's fantastic in this game. The character development that she got from the first game to this one, it really shows, and she shines brightly here. And, Max is the light to Safi's darkness. And when it all concludes at the end, I'm really excited to see where they go if Double Exposure, gets a sequel, which I absolutely hope it does, because obviously there's a lot left to talk about. There's more of the story to tell.
I think that it's absolutely going to get a sequel, and I think that there is, again, I think we've just scratched the surface. Here's the thing I'm most excited about. I'm glad that we got into the ending now, because I do think there is potential for a great thing to happen in the next game. Mm-hmm. With the reveal that other people have powers, because at the end, Safi finds one of their friends. She's having that nosebleed that Max has had in the past, that Safi has experienced. It's very clear that she has powers too.
Yeah, I think.
Diamond, and Diamond's another fantastic character in this game. I think that opens the door for Alex to make an appearance in the next game. I think that opens the door, because what True Colors and Steph's story makes very clear is that all the events of Life is Strange 1, 2, and True Colors, as well as Double Exposure, these are all taking place in the same world. So there are all these people that have these abilities in the world. They're all connected in some way, shape, or form. They are connected in some way, and I think in the next game we're going to learn a lot about that. And I think there's a chance for Alex Chen to make an appearance and maybe be a significant part of the story, in addition to Max Caulfield. Because the way the ending goes, they go back to the Turtle, and she meets up with Vin, with Diamond. I believe Reggie is there in some endings. I think Gwen can be there in some endings. Obviously. I think Gwen is there in my ending. I think she was there in my ending. I'm pretty sure she was. But Moses is there as well. Safi is kind of more or less the final choice that you make is, are you going to be there when Safi comes back, or are you basically going to say, hey, I can't support you in this, And I think the objective right call is to say, hey, this path that you're on, I cannot join you on it. That is the right choice to make. Because I think that by enabling Safi, you essentially make possible, again, this God complex, you enable it by saying, yes, I will be here for you when you return. And I think that the objective right decision is to say, I cannot do this. I cannot walk this path with you if you choose to do this. So you pretty much go to the turtle at the end, you interact with everybody. I loved the wrap up of taking the snapshots of everybody that's there, because it's basically, again, this is the group of people that you've made it through the entire game with, that have played a major role in the story for you. And I think that, again, Amanda's there as well. Like, Max basically says, okay, I'm going to tell you all what happens, and then the game ends, and then you get the cutscene with Diamond in the mid-credits of her having this nosebleed. She definitely has powers. We don't know what yet. I think Alex Chen could very much be involved in the next game, and I hope that she is, because I think that we are only, again, scratching the surface of this story, and I think there is a grander story to be told versus what we have seen already. So, Matt, before we call it an episode, is there anything we didn't talk about that you want to bring up?
Oh, yeah, no, as with every Life is Strange game, fantastic soundtrack. I've been listening to
Yes.
it nonstop. Like, Life is Strange, they just get some of the best, like, not well-known, like, indie music, and I just love it. It's on my Spotify playlist.
Yeah, I mean, the soundtrack is fantastic, just like True Colors was great. The first Life is Strange has a great soundtrack. I think that it's absolutely another high point of this game. The crazy thing is, Matt, I've not really opened up the floor for critique in this game, because I don't know that there is a major critique in this game. I think that this game fundamentally is very sound. I think that early on it can be a little formulaic to what Life is Strange has done in the past.
Yeah.
But even then, how it sets up the story and gets it rolling, I'm really not that upset again. I'm not that upset with it. I think that it's, again, a really sound game as a whole. Were there any critiques that you had?
I will say during my playthrough, there were some like objects, I'm supposed to interact with, but for some reason, the prompt would never pop up. I would have to exit the game and reload it up, and the prompt would show up. There's a lot of the moments of where you could rest, have like a Zen moment. That did not show up for me at all through my playthrough. I had like one or two in a chapter, but there's supposed to be more of them. So hopefully in my next playthrough, I can actually get those moments.
Well, I mean, I think even then, I think that's a very easy fix, and it's worth pointing out. I know the game has been updated a couple times since I last played it. I think there's probably a very good chance that Double Fine probably fixed that issue. I would imagine they probably did. But I mean, Matt, it's got to say a lot about this game that we don't really have any major critiques. I mean, this game is fantastic, dude. So much so that, again, I'm eagerly awaiting the sequel. And when we do get it, I think that it's going to be another great game. So that is going to do it for this episode of Side Mission. For Matt Beck, Kyle, who's doing the producing today, I'm Rusty Ellis. Thanks for listening.